Hi, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. Welcome. Oh, that was immediate, except for Harry, immediate obedience. Isn't that lovely? I hope that lasts. We'll see how that goes. So welcome very much to the first town hall for the residents of College Ward. I'm so delighted to be your host this evening. My name is Lane Johnson. I am the City Councillor for College Ward. Je suis la conseillère pour la quartier collège. And tonight we are gathered on the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people, which is important to consider when we're talking about city issues. We make a lot of decisions on land that was stolen from the settler colonial past that we have. And so I'll welcome that invitation, especially since tomorrow is Saturday is the day for National Truth and Reconciliation Day. So it is very timely. I want to introduce the team who's going to be supporting us today. So we have Dave right there by the pillar who is working hard. There's Dave on the College Ward team. We have Chelsea in the back there who's on the College Ward team. We have Jordan, who is our new student with Carleton University. So be gentle on Jordan. And then Heather's in the back. Heather, please. There's Heather as well. So many of you will have connected with our teammates over the course of the last year, and we're all here to support tonight's evening. What we're doing here today is a town hall, and we are so fortunate to have several city staff here, many of whom hold senior leadership roles, some who have held leadership roles within the city even when this was Nepean. So I won't say who, but some people have a very long, corporate knowledge of this area, and so we are so grateful for them to give their time and energy today to answer our questions. And that truly is the format for today. This is an old-fashioned, down and dirty town hall. So this is where we support residents to offer their questions and to try and give perspective to, nice to see you, to offer their perspective and maybe learn a little bit from each other and learn what the City of Ottawa has in store. So certainly I am here as the councillor to answer questions that might be more related to council decision making or what we have coming up in the hopper, but we certainly have a very strong team here and we'll introduce them in just a second. But I'd like to talk about how we're going to engage tonight. So we have over 140 people registered for this event. It's a hybrid event. And so we have people online and we have people in person. I'm quite delighted to see the turnout here tonight because you never know with a hybrid event how many people are going to go, So this is just wonderful. Thanks for putting on pants and joining us today. We will have to be thoughtful about time, right? So with 140 people in 90 minutes, we're going to have to be somewhat disciplined. So that means me firstly, but certainly when we're asking you to keep your comments brief when speaking to staff, and then also staff as well, if we can keep our comments brief. Sometimes we get into the habit of if I could just add to that, if I could just add to that, if I could just add to that, and then all of a sudden we have to go. So we will make a promise that if we don't get to questions or comments that are still outstanding, that we will certainly have a record of what's in the chat. We have Jordan taking notes today. You can come and see us after the event, and we will send out a summary document within 4 weeks of today. So we will do our best to capture what is not able to be discussed in the room. Further to that, we also have a flip chart here. So when I say old school, I mean, yeah, we're even using paper. For those that don't want to raise their hand, don't feel comfortable to raise your hand or just want to, something comes alive for you and you'd like to add it, one of us can certainly come up and write it for you, or I invite you to go up and write it yourself. This is another way for us to capture what's coming up for folks in the room. So we're trying to make it as accessible as possible, and certainly we can support that within the team. So we have these handouts outside. There's a business card, a magnet, and also a QR code. If you want to learn how to get in touch with us further for our newsletter or for upcoming events, you can take these with you when you leave, and you can make sure to sign up so we can stay in touch. So just quickly, and I know I haven't been quick already, but just quickly, how we're going to invite participation tonight. So without a doubt, we do know that city issues are personal issues. The political is personal. And so certainly we don't want to minimize anyone's experience when dealing with city issues, but we are going to work to try and have a constructive tone with each other, because sometimes when we invite anger into a space, other individuals can feel less inclined to participate, right? Sometimes when we invite anger into a space, we can end up sort of sucking some of the energy out of the room. And we certainly want to keep this positive energy going. So I will invite you to engage in that way, and staff as well. We validate your experience. So that's first and foremost. I validate your experience, and I welcome your perspectives and your criticism. So it's going to be a bit of a dance together to try and manage that energy. But I'll invite all of you to work with us as we try and do this, because other councillors are watching with interest. This is a pretty, I don't know how often we pull off something like this. This is pretty open, pretty vulnerable. And other councillors are curious to see if it's something that they could do in their own wards as well. Surprise, guys. They might be after you too, but you have to come to ours first. So anyway, all this to say, I want to encourage as much open, transparent participation as possible. And so here we are experimenting together tonight. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining us. And I will turn it over to the slides where we have a few, well, those are the rules. Do we have the list of the people, Chelsea? Okay, so here we are. We've got the group in front of us, and they're not sitting in the order of the slide because that's just too much to ask. So we're just going to have them. So may I ask each of you from maybe Susan downwards to just say who you are, what kind of projects, just quickly, what kind of projects you work on in College Ward, so people can have a sense of what kind of questions they can ask, and then we'll turn to the room. We'll have David on that side with a microphone. I'm going to be on this side with the microphone, and Chelsea is going to be moderating the chat. So we're going to try and rotate through and see if we can get people online and in person. So yeah, there's a lot of experimenting happening tonight. So enough from me.
It is this. Hi, everybody. My name is Sue Johns. I work in Infrastructure and Water Services Department, and I'm the director of one of the 5 services within that group. It's called Asset Management. The city owns $72 billion worth of assets, not including land. So that's all our roads and sewers, our buildings and parks, anything that the city owns in your community. My team is responsible for maintaining the list of what we own and understanding the condition that it's in and how well it's providing service. One of the annual activities that we produce is we have input into recommending to council what needs to be renewed. So existing assets, what needs to be renewed, including a lot of people's favorite is road resurfacing or building renewal, that kind of stuff. I also have a group that works in water resources, engineering and planning, and we're involved in new development as well as understanding how the city's existing sewers and water mains work. Did I hit all your list? Yeah.
Okay. Hi, everybody. So I am the general manager of the Infrastructure and Water Services Department. So we are also responsible for the operations of the city's water system. So from taking water from the river through our water treatment plants, through our distribution systems, collecting rainwater and sewage from people's homes, and then bringing it back to a wastewater treatment plant and treating it safely before it's returned to the river. So we have care and control of those systems. And we also have, as Sue mentioned, asset management of the city's numerous assets, as well as the design and construction of those projects.
Hello, I'm Allison Hamlin. I'm a manager of Development Review West. So my team and our role is to review development applications that are made by developers. So we're part of Planning Services, which is under the overall Department of Planning, Real Estate, and Economic Development. So I guess I kind of am the representative here for things like Well, definitely development applications, the signs that you see when a development is proposed, that's my bread and butter. But I think I could also speak to questions related to economic development, heritage, building permits. That's what planning does, and the official plan as well. Yeah, thank you.
Cyril Rogers, interim CFO, treasurer, and general manager of finance and corporate services. So basically, I oversee all the administrative functions at the city: finance, IT, HR, supply, procurement, fleet, and service Ottawa.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Paul Levine. I'm the Director of Housing Services, and we oversee the development of affordable housing, as well as the administration of social housing, including housing benefits, and also all homelessness related programs and services in the community. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tracy McGarry, and I'm the Director of Complexes, Aquatics, and Specialized Services. So working under the umbrella of Recreation, Cultural, and Facility Services. So predominantly my role is to oversee all aquatic operations across the city, whether it be inside buildings or externally, beaches, wading pools, splash pads, outdoor pools, as well as major recreation complexes. And also in my portfolio is an inclusive recreation unit, making sure that we are providing accessible services for individuals with needs. And also with recreation, cultural, and facility services, similar to others here, I guess I'm here to kind of sort of support the department. So we're also responsible for maintaining all the facilities across the city from a maintenance, operation and maintenance perspective, and planning and development of recreation facilities and parks.
Hi, I'm Pat from OC Transpo. The team that I look after at OC Transpo works on planning the service, developing budgets, doing our long-term capital planning, running the technology that underpins operations and customer information, and customer service, taking calls from customers and getting information back to people. Some of the things that we're working on in College Ward, well, in the short term, we're continuously working to keep up with a very quickly increasing ridership along Baseline Road on Route 88. And for the longer term, one of the things we're doing here is planning how all the bus routes need to change to connect with the new O train line that Tristan's going to talk about.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm a senior engineer and I'm working on stage 2 of LRT. So our team, the construction management team, we provide oversight on the construction. So right now we're building pretty much everywhere across the ward, if you haven't noticed. And some of the visible areas are Iris Station, Algonquin Station, the Pinecrest Stormwater Management Pond. And we've also recently erected the steel structure across the 417 that will be connecting Baxter Road to Queensview Station. Other areas of interest that are just north of this ward on the north side of the highway that residents will probably be making use of as well include Bayshore Station, Queensview Station, Pinecrest Station, as well as Moody Station. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sean McGuire. I'm the traffic assessment specialist for this area. And with my team, we try our best to deal with speeding and parking issues. Thanks.
Hi, my name's Phil Landry. I'm the Director of Traffic Services, so I work along with Sean. We also, under my portfolio, is traffic signal operation, pavement marking, signs, installation, traffic management for construction. So anything that's traffic related that's on the right of way usually falls under our group. And I'm also representing all the different areas within Public Works, which includes road services and parks and also solid waste. So pleased to be here.
Hi, and I'm Beth Gooding. I'm the Director of the city's Public Safety Service. The two programs that probably most implicate College Ward in my area are emergency management and 911. So my team is responsible for helping the city to prepare, respond to, and recover from emergencies. And we also work very closely with the Ottawa Police Service to manage the city's 911 service.
Okay, so you can see we've got an absolute breadth of knowledge here to answer the questions that might be on your minds and on your hearts. And so I would ask, if you do have a question, please raise your hand, and Dave and I will get our steps in and come around and provide the microphone. And if we don't have anyone from the room, I'll see if there's any questions coming in online. Do we have any hands up coming? Okay, Dave, you look busier than me. Go for it.
Hello. I think this question is for Tammy Rose. Following the August 11th storm that flooded Maryville, etc., I'm wondering what projects are in the works to expand what probably needs to be expanded in terms of rain collection. I know lots of basements flooded in our unfinished basements, but basements flooded in our area where the storm came down too quickly. Extreme weather, I can understand circumstances are hard to plan for, but I'm wondering what's being planned to mitigate the risk, I guess. Thank you.
It was a big storm and definitely impact that we heard from Councillor Johnson here in College Ward, as well as several other wards across the city. And you're right, unpredicted. So what plans we have is that our routine annual plans include consideration when I talked about what needs to be renewed, what needs to be rehabilitated. Some of the areas in the city that suffered flooding on private property in basements and etc. They were built mid-century. The standards of that time were met for construction. It's not the same as if you drive in a suburban area and you see the construction there. The engineering requirement has changed over time. When we consider what should we be updating this year with the budget allocation that we have, how well the system performs in a flood, for example, or in a heavy rain event, is one of the factors that we consider, including things like how old is the pipe? Is it failing? Have we had a couple of water main breaks on a water type system? So we are still in the process of collecting detailed information about what happened to be able to understand how well the system performed and if there's new information from what people saw that we didn't know about. So we have computer models to try and help us identify what risks need to be addressed. But a real live event like that gives us new information. So our plans are ongoing to continuously improve and spend money in a place that needs it, and certainly areas that have suffered flooding would have a higher priority. Thank you.
So I'll add, because I'm the host. So Sue touched on a really important theme here that we're going to hear probably from a lot of people's concerns, is that College Ward is comprised of these mature neighborhoods. We were designed, in the mid-century and to a different standard than our suburban counterparts, and also we're not as old as our urban counterparts. So when dollars go to renew, quite often they will go to those, there's pipes and so on in the downtown core that are made out of wood, so that's where the money goes. And right now we have to have some sensitivity in the policy for geographic implications, and we don't really have that. And it is difficult, and we'll get to that also with road safety, I'm sure. It is difficult to suggest that we take money from, in a road safety example, to restore those intersections where we've had serious injury or fatalities, to redirect to our wards where we actually see more frequent collisions but with less severity. That's a tough thing to advocate for, because of course you want the money to go where people are getting killed. But if you have a frequency in our older neighborhoods, where does that fit with the sensitivity of our policies, and how do dollars get allocated? So those are the types of things that in our office we're fighting for, is that we do require a nuanced approach to policy and budget applications when it comes to our older neighborhoods. So thanks, Sue. Okay, so we'll take one from over this side. Hello.
Hello, my name is Bernie McMahon, live in Bell's Corners. My question, I guess, would be directed to OC Transpo personnel. Oh, yes. What's a little mind-boggling here is we know that there's a lot going on with OC Transpo trying to keep the money flowing when the service is falling apart. And I know there's only a certain pile of money in the bucket. So can somebody answer me why there is a station being built at going from the Leon's parking lot to Baxter Road rather than at another area where it could probably be better used? This is probably millions of dollars. And now also, in addition to that, what's going to happen in Bell's Corners if that's going to be the end of the line for many, many years because of what's going on? What's going to happen when people get off the train there? There's no parking, there's no other infrastructure, there's no commercial, yet that's the end of the line as we know it now. So again, going back, why is that station being built, the money being spent, Leon's to Baxter? And thank you.
Thanks. I can say a few words about how council decided, but I can't justify or explain what was really a long involved public policy process. But the station at Queensview, which is just on the north side of the highway, and it's the first station east of Pinecrest, is intended to serve that whole area, the people along Iris, the people in Queensway Terrace North, feeding into the intensification and the increase in commercial density that's to happen along Queensview, and to support some of the redevelopment of older industrial areas into something denser in the future. And we all realize that we're now building a railway line that was approved before we'd even heard of COVID-19. And it was approved, it was funded, it was under construction before that virus came to our country. And looking at it now, would we do that now? Would we address that travel need in the same way? Can't speculate on that because we're not making that decision right now. Jumping over to Moody Station at the west end of the line, that'll be a really important major station. All the bus routes from Bell's Corners, from Kanata, from Stittsville will all come into that station. So it's going to be a big transfer station from buses to trains. Really a big improvement in connectivity onto the rapid transit network for Bell's Corners and for Crystal Bay and Crystal Beach. And if in future the train goes further west, then that becomes more of a local station for Bell's Corners, Crystal Beach, and the DND Carling campus. But if it's the end of the line for a while, then it'll serve the function of being a major transfer point for some number of years.
Thanks, Pat. I think there is something to be said also with the different roles and responsibilities in the governance, right? So city staff follow the direction of council and committee. And so they get their direction, they put forward their best recommendations, but it is not always people will say, well, why can't city staff just change their mind? And when new information comes forward, and that's not the way that the legislative cycle turns over. So when it comes to decisions with OC Transpo, our transportation master plan is coming up, the second part in 2025, and we are going to have that conversation about stage 2 or stage 3 LRT versus other investments in transit. And then that's the place where we do this. But I did bring the mayor to the corner of Moody and Robertson and asked him if he could see where Moody Station was. And you can't because it's super freaking far. And we do need to have investments down Moody for people to get there, which would include buses and would probably include a cycle path, which would be on NCC land. So it's negotiations with NCC. So anyhow, just to offer that sometimes it is, the will of council, and you need to be directing some of the frustration with, those decision makers too, of which I am one. Okay, Chelsea, so off to you.
Okay, so I'm going to cover some of the questions that have come in on our online chat. Before I get into the questions, I just want to ask, I see that there are quite a few people that have their hands raised, and we're not using that function for this meeting just because we have a lot of people and a lot of questions to get through. So there is a Q&A box If you can please submit your questions there, and I know that you can't see them, that's because I'm going to publish them as I go through. But it's working, so please feel free to send through your questions. So the first one is from Sue, and she's asking about the excessive street racing that's happening all night long along the 417 of Maitland. So we don't have representation from OPS here, but perhaps Phil, you could speak to that, please.
Thanks for the question, Sue. Yeah, so street racing is a challenge and an issue, just not on the 417, but we have it in various parts of the city. In terms of, it's really a police enforcement issue in terms of being able to address those things. And what we recommend, and if the police were here today, they'd also be saying it's important to put those inquiries in and those calls into the police. There is a website that people can get to, and we'd be happy to share that after the meeting or maybe part of the chat. In terms of making those complaints, because if the police don't hear about it, they can't enforce it. And they also have a telephone number to leave a message, and they do check those as well. But that's really the best way to do it. And then the police can be there, because the challenge is that they just don't stick in one area of the city. You know, they'll move around. So one night it might be the 417, the next night it might be on Woodruff, then Strandherd or Ennis. So they seem to move around. So it's important that people let the police know so that they can take appropriate action.
Tell them about your heat sensor pilot, Phil. What's your heat sensor pilot for speeding and roads that allow for excessive speeds? You know, the thing where you can see where the heat maps are with excessive speeding. Tell them about that, 'cause that's cool.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Actually, it's a pilot we're working with actually Michelin, the tire company, but they've got an intelligence section tied to that. And what they do is they use data from folks' phones to see how fast people are going and where hard braking's happening and speeding. So we can actually plot on a map where things are happening. And historically, what we've done in road safety is we wait for the collisions to happen, and then we go and take action. So this actually tells us sort of near misses and high speeds and hard braking. And the hope is in the future, we can actually proactively go out and fix the intersections or the things that are happening so that these accidents don't happen. So we've just started this project in terms of looking at a couple of case uses, and it's very promising in terms of being able to see that. So there'll be more information on that as the year goes by.
Very good. Thank you. I think that's important to add that we are trying to evolve our data collection and use, so Big Brother is watching, but in this case, if you care about road safety, hopefully it can help us to identify those near misses, because unfortunately, again, that's not what we see. So Dave.
Yeah, so I'm Harry Fisher. I'm part of the Bel Air Community Association. And my question is about the Pinecrest Storm Pond. When is it going to be finished? This hole in the ground, which is supposed to help when we do have that 100-year storm, seems to be taking forever. And I know the local residents are really wondering, when is it going to get finished?
So I think that's a question for me. So we are pushing really hard. There's quite a bit of work going on there right now, and it's been going on all summer. There's a lot of excavation to get done. There's also things that you may not see where there's quite a bit of structure work that has to take place as well. So that's the inlet structure where the water is going to come into the pond, and then the outlet structure where it's going to come back out to the creek. What I can say is that it looks like we'll be ready to commission that pond by the end of this year. So that's what we're pushing for. We've started to do some handover walks. There may still be some landscaping and say pathway connections that still need to be built, but in terms of commissioning a pond for the pond to be operational, we are targeting the end of this year. We'll probably have to be back in the spring to finish up that landscaping and pathways, though.
Hi there. I live on Parkland Drive, just around the corner here. And just a few weeks ago, you guys put up traffic calming signs. And then I hear just a couple days ago that there's a plan for a sidewalk along the way, which is fine, one or the other. But don't you think you're going too fast? You just put the sidewalk or the traffic calming signs up just this summer. Why don't you wait a couple of years, a year or two, to see if that works before you put in a sidewalk? Because I know a lot of people in my area do not want a sidewalk because that's going to make it hard to park on their driveway.
Can comment on that too. Okay, so the sidewalk plan for Park Glen is part of the transportation master plan. So it's one of many active transportation projects that are identified, but the funding cycles for those get reprioritized every year. So the likelihood of your seeing a sidewalk on Park Glen, like in my first term of council, is probably unlikely. So there shouldn't be that kind of, that would be the fastest thing that ever happened in the city of Ottawa. Let's put it that way. So so we won't see that happen. But what I'm also excited about for the Park Glen example is that Algonquin College behind you guys is also undergoing an asset plan. They're thinking about how they're going to redevelop and reimagine for their growing population, which is important for us because they create, respectfully, a lot of pressure on our neighborhoods with students that don't have housing. So they are trying to take a progressive step on this. But right now, their plan doesn't talk to our plans, and because they're on private property. So even though they have sidewalks on their property that are quite close to the Park Glen streets, we wouldn't count them in our plans. So through my conversations with Algonquin, we now have our planners sitting on their plans, and their planners are going to be involved in some of our plans for the Algonquin station area, so that maybe we can think about that transportation network a bit more holistically for how people move through to get to school or whatever, and not have to spend, double the money for the same result. So lots to come on that, but thank you very much for your comments. Is that good? Okay. Who's next? Chelsea, by all means.
Okay, great. So we've got a question from Mike, and he's asking about Copeland Park, which is bordered by Central Park and Maitland Avenue. So he's pointing out that 5 out of 7 streets have no sidewalks. So that includes Cameo, Bonnie, Grey Rock, Castle Hill, and Green Lawn, as well as Clyde and Glenmont, I guess, are the 2 that do. Just pointing out the shifting demographics. So streets replete with families strolling, people walking their dogs, moms and dads pushing baby strollers, people on bikes, kids shooting hoops and playing street hockey. Yet the speed limit is still posted at 50 kilometers per hour. A recent speed study was conducted, which didn't reveal any significant speeding in the area, but that it's an unreasonably high speed limit. And understanding that the budget is tight for traffic calming, but surely amending the speed limit to that of most neighborhoods in the area and deploying some TTC would be helpful. So there's a whole lot to unpack there, which is probably Sean McGuire, perhaps.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I guess in terms of the speed limits, we are gradually changing the speed limits of residential neighborhoods to 40 kilometers per hour as a gateway, the gateway signage. So eventually, like sometime soon, that probably will be reduced to 40. We are also going to be reviewing our speed zoning policy in 2025. So there may be changes to how speed limits are implemented in different areas. And then traffic calming, I mean, that's we have a limited budget each year per ward. But if we do see that the operating speeds are higher than what they should be, higher than our threshold above the speed limit, then we can recommend certain treatments, and then they're prioritized by the councillor as seen necessary.
I can't stress enough how exciting this speed zone policy review is. As dry as it sounds, it's actually really exciting because the city of Ottawa, and you guys elected me to be excited about it, so I'll take it on. But all this to say, the city of Ottawa before was a little reluctant to look at speeds on streets and reducing speeds without the full investment of road redesign, which is fair, right? Because if you still have a wide open road and you put it down to 10, no one's going to go 10 because of all of the cues to go faster. However, this speed zone policy is nudging us in the right direction. And with the new revenue stream through automated speed enforcement, we will have increased money to invest in road safety in those priorities for that road redesign. The other thing that we're fighting for is a complete street program. So again, our old neighborhoods, we don't get, does anyone here know the Bel Air Drive example? Bel Air Drive just got a full renewal because they had to do all the sewers under it. So they got bump outs, they got speed bumps, they got a pedestrian crossing, they got everything. And the neighborhoods are loving it. The neighbors are loving it. But the only reason that investment was made was because it was an economy of scale, because they had to dig out the whole frickin' thing. So that means for all of our streets who don't need the full, sewer renewal, we don't have a program to get those road safety investments. They don't currently exist until recently, until we advocated for it. And now we have the program. Is there any money in the program? No. But you need to have a program in order to put money. So I'm very proud of this achievement. We have a complete streets retrofit program in the new transportation master plan, and we're going to get money in it. So this 2025 study is going to, which I believe was actually, as far as I was talking to Phil recently, was 2024. So that's interesting that just happened, but we'll get back to it. The recommendations will help us to advocate further, saying there is policy here, there is a program here, now we need money here, and we deserve it in these outer urban wards because we're intensifying. We have infill happening everywhere. We're going to welcome more people. We want more people. It creates investment in our neighborhoods. We get local business. We keep our schools open, but we need to have the benefit of that development in our road safety and other programs. So anyway, my apologies. No, I'm not apologetic. I love this stuff. Okay, where are we? Dave, and then over here.
Hello, I'm Colin Jacob. My question is regarding bike safety. I think it ties in very well with that road master plan. Over the summer, all bikeways leading from here to downtown, pretty much, they all had construction on them, and they made us go through a lot of detours that didn't make a lot of sense, to be honest. And you never see that, for road repairs. You have a road repair, then you create a temporary drive road, taking, for example, the highway that goes by the Ottawa River, right? All the work that's gone there, well, there's proper roads for cars to keep circulating on it, but then they completely shut off the bike path and let us go through like on sidewalks and whatever. So yes, my question is, I'd like to hear you, Councillor Lane, on this, because I know that you've been campaigning on safety. So what are your plans regarding this? Thank you.
Merci. Et je devrais dire en avance que si vous préférez à parler en français, vous êtes invité à utiliser votre langue primaire et nous pouvons parler dans les deux langues. Most of us can. So what do we do about cycling safety? We just had a fabulous conversation about that at Transportation Committee this week, or this morning. Oh my goodness. Yeah, this morning. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions that we're having to work towards is that cycling for many is recreation. Like the words came up out of another councillor's mouth saying, what we're asking is for, it was the Queen Elizabeth Drive, which I don't want to talk about today. If you want to talk about it, you can, but the Queen Elizabeth Drive being closed for cars so that people can have recreation of cycling. And and the argument came up that in fact, many, many people use their cycle to commute. And one of the exciting policies that's coming through with the new transportation master plan is that the connections for pedestrian and cycling facilities to get to the LRT, to get to transit, should be prioritized in terms of funding. We have had a detour recently, and David knows more about this than I, but with the Iris Street LRT construction, we had a specific detour that was extremely dangerous. were reported extremely dangerous by users. And so we are going there, I think, on October 3rd, which is next week, with the Accessibility Advisory Committee, as well as members of the LRT team, to make sure
The cycling safety coordinator.
Oh, thank you. And the cycling safety coordinator. So there is someone on staff that specifically is to look at cycling safety. We recently asked for them to look at the Woodruff pinch point, for example, where people are going under the overpass and it's really close to a bus lane. So there is someone on staff. So we certainly can connect you, you know, specifically with that department as far as casework goes. But I am hopeful that a culture change can come where we're not looking at cycling as a recreation, and that in fact, you know, encouraging it as a true mode of transportation requires investment. So it's Ottawa for a reason, you know. So it's an uphill battle. We're in a unique position, being in these neighborhoods where people really don't feel safe to cycle, and so they buy a car, and it just continues to perpetuate itself. You know, parents don't feel comfortable walking their kids to school, so they drive, and then they all park on the lawn at the school, and you know, it's just it's a real challenge, but one I'm willing to fight for.
Hello, hi, okay. Tracy, I'm going to ask you a question because I'm worried no one's going to ask you a question about aquatics, so I'm going to do it. My name is Jeremy McQuaig. I have an adorable daughter. I've lived in the riding for 20-ish years, and because this lady's involved, we're getting more involved. We go to town halls, we go to community association things with Wendy. Hi, Wendy. And we signed our daughter up for swim because we thought people in Ottawa go to swim. That's super competitive, and you should do that. Tracy, here's what happened. We did Little Dippers, and she got a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy certificate. And then the person there said she couldn't have a sticker because the city didn't issue stickers to our area. And my daughter cried because she didn't get a sticker on her certificate. And I say this not to be glib because, you know, she should get her participation swim award, but because we have major issues in the city. We have OC Transpo issues, we have road issues. I have lots of speeding on my street. There's infill, there's urbanization. It goes on and on and on, but we can't get a small child a sticker on a real certificate that wasn't photocopied 20 minutes before she finished a class that was 4 months in length. So my question is, not only could we get her a sticker, because I'm hoping you carry them on your person as the official person, but I'm actually hoping that perhaps a few of you or a couple of you could express something that you're excited about doing in our riding, because we've had a councillor who didn't really advocate for the riding, and it just feels like we've been left behind. So maybe Tracy, you could kick us off with what you're excited about from aquatics and the riding, and then if a couple of others could share, that would be very inspiring.
Was it Jeremy? Okay, thanks for the question, Jeremy. So the sticker thing, just to share with you, as I think most of you or some of you know, the city just switched over our swim program, and actually that is definitely something that we are super excited and proud of. For years and years, for as long as I've known and worked in the department, we flip back and forth between service providers, and we shift our program delivery to align with either of those. And when we were advised that our provider was getting out of the business and focusing on emergency response and not the life-saving or the swimming, we made the decision that we're going to create our own, and we're going to build it off the same principles and with the support of Life Saving Society. So we had a team do this, and stickers, believe it or not, was a big part of that conversation and the decision. And what we heard is a lot of those stickers didn't resonate with everybody the same way they did with your daughter, but we still wanted a meaningful piece of something for swimmers to follow that path. So if you don't have it yet, there is a map that was created, and it's almost like, I think at the time when we were talking about it, I was talking about a growth chart that you put on your wall, you know, and you measure as you go. Well, this is a path through the city, and it's it's reflective of a map of the city, and it has all the different creatures that represent the different stages of swimming. And that is a poster that can be used. And then maybe we can get our own sticker to stick on there as we go. But it was maybe more meaningful to see the progression and maybe less waste with stickers being tossed or left on our in the drains of our showers and that sort of thing, which was creating a bit of a maintenance thing as well. But I think that is certainly a huge achievement for the city, is to come up with our own swim program that we hope one day other municipalities are actually going to come back to us asking for some support and advice on how they can do something similar.
I think I'm excited for stickers. I'm going to get on this bandwagon and use some incentives to hit the, our LRT schedules. But in all honesty, it's really exciting right now that we're starting to see the stations really come up. You can see the LRT really start to take shape. Soon we're going to be getting a rail coming into this ward, and it's really going to start to look like a transit way and not just a big construction project. So I think this is very exciting, and there's a lot more to come over the end of this year and the next year. Thanks.
Yeah, just very quickly so that I don't go over time. I'm just very excited about the opportunity to work with some of the community associations in College Ward and other types of organized entities to help better prepare you for emergencies. You were hit hard during the derecho and then again during the freezing rainstorm in April, and we learned a lot. We're working with a range of partners, including Hydro Ottawa, and we just want to keep understanding your needs, filling any gaps, and mobilizing as many residents as possible for the neighbors helping neighbors perspective. And so I'm very excited about that. Thanks.
About the placement of the speed. Sorry. My name is Susan, and I want to ask a question about the placement of the speed camera on Greenbank Road. To most, or to me, it looks as if it's a money grab, because if you are traveling south down Greenbank Road from Baseline, say, and you're going down towards Barhaven, the camera is on the left-hand side, hidden in front of the bridge, the railway bridge that goes across Greenbank Road. So what happens is people come along, they head down the hill there, they see the speed camera, they put on their brakes, and then they get past the speed camera and immediately speed up again, which is exactly where Sir Robert Borden High School is, Knoxdale School is, and where Greenbank School used to be, but now they're in Sir Robert Borden. So it doesn't seem to me as if it's in the right place. If you want the speed camera to slow people down when they are passing those schools, it needs to be the other side of the bridge. Can you comment on that, please?
Yeah, so the placement of speed cameras, 4 years ago, when automated speed enforcement was allowed by the province, we went and evaluated speeds at every school in the city. And then we identified schools where we saw excessive speeds, which is usually 15 kilometers or higher. And so that's how different cameras or the cameras in the different areas were selected. So the one on Greenbank, that was selected because that was the area that we saw the highest speeding. I know personally, this goes back 10 years ago, meet with parents right in that section concerned with, the kids walking down from the north side of the tracks to the south side of the tracks. And so the data supported that. And that's why we also put it up on going up the hill, because if we put it going down the hill, then you get the concern in terms of, well, you're doing it where people tend to go faster because the hill gravity brings you down faster. So we made a conscious decision to put it so that when you're going up the hill, so you necessarily aren't going as fast as you might have been. In terms of the money grab perspective, all money that we get from automated speed enforcement, council agreed that money should be reinvested to road safety. So it doesn't go to the city coffers in general. It goes specifically back to road safety in a reserve. And that's the money that we then use to reinvest to make our roads safer. Our goal is to get to 0 fatalities and serious injuries. And by installing more of these cameras where we're seeing the speeding. It's not at locations where there's no speeding. It's where we're actually, the data is supporting the use of those things. And over the next few years, you're going to see more pop up in the city because we have a lot of areas where there's that type of speeding, especially in your schools where you've got the kids that are walking to and from those areas. So that money is now being used to help us, implement measures to reduce the likelihood of fatalities happening in the future. And so that's sort of the rationale behind that decision.
Okay, I'm going to jump in with a question from the chat. So we've got Joseph who has asked, he says, I support intensification. However, it seems to me that the zoning supporting it is allowing developers to build buildings, towers that are out of scale in height with the surrounding areas. Example, baseline west of Greenbank, Lansdowne. Is there any consideration to amend the zoning to support intensification without these disproportionately tall towers?
I'll take that one. Short answer, no. We have direction from the province, which basically governs planning in Ontario, to intensify and to find ways to build more housing, create more housing supply. Part of what the city has done is signed on to a pledge that we will build 15,000 units within the next, or we will allow to be built. So in my role, that would be give approvals for 15,000 units within the next 10 years to address housing supply. That's our pledge to the province by the City of Ottawa. And if we didn't make that pledge, the province wasn't going to give certain amounts of funding. Perhaps Councillor can speak to that. So we also have gone through a new official plan process in the last few years. It was just approved in 2022, and that really opened up new areas of the city for the kind of intensification that hadn't been seen previously. So this ward and other, call them inner urban wards, is going to see a lot more intensification, and the issue, I guess, of a disproportionate scale with the existing development, that is a new reality. In fact, the province has also changed some rules about exterior architectural expression. Really, it's like get that stuff built is the direction that we're being given as staff.
I will add to that because I do think this is a very sensitive topic. I think it can't be overstated how the city is a creature of the province in this regard. So we are governed by the Planning Act, and we are at the discretion of provincial policy. That being said, there is what's coming up is called the zoning bylaw review. It makes me sad that the official plan was approved in 2022. There was a great deal of engagement from 2019 to 2022 to try and get that right and to make sure that people knew that that was happening. I don't always feel like that information was communicated as engagingly as it could have been with the residents of College Ward. And so, for the zoning bylaw review, which is where we get into the nitty gritty within neighborhoods. So, when the province says that you can build 3 units as of right on any plot of land that has city services, what does that plot of land, how does that plot of land, what size does it have to be? What do the setbacks have to be? Could you have small C commercial within your neighborhoods? All those kinds of questions are still coming forward over the next 3 years. And my commitment is to, work as hard as I can to ensure that that process is communicated and that your feedback is integral to how I represent your needs at council. So that's why we really are encouraging you to sign up for our newsletter, stay in touch with our office. We will continue to do more engagement practices around this, because those are the places where we will see future changes. And feeling surprised is the worst. Feeling surprised is the worst feeling. You think that there's a secret, or you feel like they're sneaking around. And I certainly don't want anyone to feel like that if I can help it. So, okay, so now we're at, no, oh, I apologize, Dave, go, by all means.
My name is Molly McGoldrick-Larson, and it's kind of nostalgic for me to be in this room and ask a question from this side of the desk. Some of you will understand that. I've been a resident of Bell's Corners for over 40 years, and I recently observed something very puzzling. So as many of you will know, Robertson Road, west of Fitzgerald, is still got ditches and no sidewalks. Another section of roadway that's similar to this is Richmond Road between Pinecrest and Bayshore. There are no sidewalks. There are paved strips. It's very narrow. It's very poor surface, and it's got a very high volume of pedestrians and cyclists. And when you look at Bell's Corners as a walkable community, as many of you will know, it has a very high walking index. So another street I'd just like to speak to briefly, and then I'll get to my point, is Old Richmond Road between Seaton and West Hunt Club. It's like a roller coaster driving down that road. It's absolutely unbelievable. So to my surprise, and a number of other neighbors who, I mean, many of you will know that the population in Bell's Corners is, I mean, people don't move around a lot. There's a lot of people in my neighborhood that have been there for 40 years. And we watched Fitzgerald Street that runs between Moody Drive and Robertson Road be ripped up this summer, right down to the gravel, the curbs taken out, and the sidewalks taken out, and new surface and new sidewalks and new curbs come in. How did that capital work get funded, and out of what pot? And what was the criteria that led that to a higher priority to be reconstructed over and above those other areas that have higher need in the immediate area? So where did the money come from for Fitzgerald that is not there for Robertson Road, or for that matter for Richmond Road at Pinecrest?
Thank you very much for that very detailed question. I was driving to all of those places when you were talking about them. In my mind, there is one pot of money within the capital renewal budget that's for road rehabilitation, and there's 3 or 4 different kinds of road rehabilitation, and the one that you're describing on Fitzgerald was a full road resurfacing. And so at the time that the pavement is going to be removed, if the curbs and sidewalks or whatever is there needs to be redone, they are done at the same time. So the allocation of what roads are going to be done with the pot of money that's intended for road resurfacing, which is paid for from tax dollars, there is a prioritization system that assesses all the roads in the city on the same basis. And the roads of the greatest need, based on the criteria that are applied as approved by council, determine which ones are recommended in the budget. I heard you use the word need as well. And so what I would suggest is that there's a difference in the priorities that we're applying and the priorities that you see in your community. So I'd be very happy to spend a bit more time to go through what our priorities are and talk about each of the specific roads that you talked about as a follow-up. I think if you're willing to do that. Basically, we assess everything across the whole city equally. The current criteria that we use have to do with the condition of the pavement, whether the pavement is cracked and water is getting in, the comfort of the ride, the amount of traffic, whether it has buses, the amount of pedestrians. I'm at 6 criteria, and I know there's more than that because it's not my primary job. And I think the criteria that we use is based on, as I said, council direction. That how those criteria are applied and the ability to change them is also a council decision that's coming up in 2024 into 2025. We'll do our long range plans that talk about how money is allocated and what things are important and what things are priorities. So I'd be happy to get your details after and share more of that information because I can tell that it's very important.
And very good. So Sue and I sat together when we looked at budget 2023 and we talked about Fitzgerald because I said, what the heck is this? Nobody lives there. You're resurfacing a road that nobody lives on. I mean, some people might be using it, but yes, exactly. And I asked the same question. She answered just as carefully. And so we are going to be looking at the infrastructure master plan and those aspects. The reason why Molly is so good at asking questions is because she used to be a former councillor in the city of Nepean. So she's ready to grill. So all this to say, you know, something that I've learned since I took office is that you can't just have a good idea at any given time. You have to wait for those plans to come around so that you can have your intervention on those plans and on those cycles. The other part of Molly's question that I'll flag, because Cyril's here looking just totally disengaged. Someone asked Cyril a question about money. Robin will, I'm sure he will. Those paved strips are called maintenance strips. They're not actually technically sidewalks. We've got a few in College Ward that are used as sidewalks because they look like sidewalks, but they're actually not sidewalks. And so they're not maintained in the winter and they're not upgraded as part of the cycling or sidewalk network. But in fact, to the layperson, when you walk on a paved strip, you think, hey, this is as best as this. I mean, with the sidewalks in Ottawa, you think this is probably as good as it gets. So I have asked Cyril to look at those maintenance strips in the budget 2024 and to say, look, they're being used as such. What do we need to do in order to bring them up to standard? Because at this point, we are creating our own safety concerns. So thank you for those comments, Molly. Always appreciate it. And now we're going to move on to Robin.
My question is actually for you, Lynn. Yeah, but it's related though. But Cyril will be interested for sure. So I waited a while to ask because I wanted to see if anybody raised the issue of the police, and nobody has. So, but people have raised the issue of funding and lack of funding to some degrees. You mentioned you have a program that has no money in it. And this is given the context of on Monday, the Ottawa Police Services Board approved the police's intention to ask for probably another $15 million for their budget, and they approved $197 million for the South facility. Okay? Now that is against the context of the Ottawa Police's own data still showing that they're using force disproportionately on Black, Indigenous, and Middle Eastern people, and the Ottawa Police Services Board that is supposed to oversee the police and do it with public input has been instead limiting public restrictions to the point that they actually strangle restrictions down to just me, right? And then in May they banned me outright. I was actually at the United Nations in May and had a woman who was going to speak on my behalf. They said no, she can't. Oh, sorry. I was going to speak in May, and I was at the United Nations, and they had a woman who was going to speak on my behalf, and they said no, we changed the rules. That can't happen. In June they just banned me outright, and in July they just banned me outright. So, and then the meeting on it's to you, yeah. So it's and the meeting on Monday, right? There was 2 delegations, right? Me reading a press release about us suing the Ottawa Police Services Board, and Councillor Wilson Lowe, who came. I thought, oh, he's going to come and maybe give a nuanced. He just came and spoke pro-police. So my question to you is, will you go and delegate at the Ottawa Police Services Board and talk about the fact that like this disproportionate use of force against Black, Indigenous, like what are they going to do with that number? Like I've got 2 sons who, when they walk out of our Palisades street house, I'm scared to death. that they're going to get have an interaction with the auto police and end up beat up or dead.
Thank you for that. And I know that the intersection between the city of Ottawa and the police is really frustrating because the delegations are kind of your only opportunity to make your voice heard, right? Otherwise, you are somewhat at the discretion of the Police Act and don't have the same discretion. So I welcomed or I hosted Chief Eric Stubbs in College Ward a couple, I guess at the beginning of September now, and we went and toured many places, but we spoke. I did bring up excessive force. I brought up sexual assault. I brought up repercussions for the people that are on the police force. I think that's something that we need to see because right now it appears that, when you cause harm or you're violent as a police officer, the repercussions or the loss of pay or the loss of job are absolutely not in place. Can I delegate there? Yes, I could. I would have to see because of their restrictions on delegations, I would have to see what reports are coming forward and where my comments would be applicable because they have really tightened the way that you can participate, which you've described, right? So you need to ensure that your comments are related specifically to what they're going to cover in the agenda, no general terms, and then make sure that you provide your comments in advance so that they can be vetted. So I would have to see what was coming up from the agenda. And if there's something that you see specifically that you think relates to this issue, I would be happy to do that. Okay. So that being said, I should also mention that we did invite the police to be here tonight to speak to enforcement issues generally for traffic, because that's sort of something we interact with us, but unfortunately they withdrew. So we weren't able to welcome them today. So where are we now? So Chelsea, thank you. Thanks, Robin.
Okay, so I'm going to read a comment that was submitted by Lila. She says, "Thanks for doing this. I would like to know what will be done with the parking issue overnight and long term on Checkers Road." So that's kind of the first part. And then second, I know a report was done regarding the speed bumps on Bel Air and Field Street. Great to know that they'll be addressed for the height issue. However, I believe it is excessive, specifically the 3 that are located in front of Putnam. There's no need for 3. Are we encouraging people to cross where there is no crosswalk? I believe this needs to be looked at. That's kind of a 2-parter there. So the first one is the parking on Checkers Road, which would probably be you, Sean.
Yeah, thank you for that. So to change parking regulations on a residential street, unless we see it as like we only have delegated authority to change things if there's a justified safety reason to do it. So if there's a safety concern, we'll go out and review. We'll look at the site, see if there's a safety concern, and if we feel it's necessary to change the curbside regulations, we can. But otherwise, it'll have to go through a petition process where residents will petition the impacted residents on the street, and if they get 66% or more in agreement, then we can have the change implemented.
I can add to that, Sean. I have been working with Sean on this issue. We have had several requests from residents about Checkers Road, south end of Checkers. A gentleman right here asked a question about it. And we have sent it on to Sean. We've asked the city staff to look at whether there is a safety concern, particularly in winter, because then we can look at seasonal restrictions on parking. I have also sent it on to parking enforcement in the bylaw enforcement section, and they have said they'll step up enforcement in the area.
Good evening. I'm John Perkin. I've lived in this riding since like 1980 something. Okay, is that better? Okay. I was waiting for someone else to ask the question about OC Transpo in general. I know it's not more of a staff thing, it's more of a political thing, so I'll try to address to Lane, whatever. When I moved here in 80, the bus system was poor. Back then, they built the Transaway. It got pretty good for a while. Then it got swamped. They said, okay, we'll do something about it. But the way the system is now, it's just plain broken. Buses are late, they're canceled, they're delayed, they just don't show up. For anecdotes, I was driving from Briar Green to Bell's Corners. Fortunately, I don't have to take the bus very often. It's really nice. I was driving from Briar Green to Bell's Corners. Twice I saw young women running to catch a bus and putting their lives in danger because they knew if they missed that bus, they were there for a long, long time. I was talking to students who are trying to get to their classes at Algonquin. They're missing their labs, they're missing exams because they're just not getting there. The system is broken. The LRT was supposed to fix all the problems, and hopefully it will when it's ready. The problems I see is if you guys, if it's not staff, if the politicians cancel the next phase of the LRT, we're going to be in worse shape than what we ever have been. The one question I can raise for staff, one of the things I saw, the degradation in OC Transpo service happened when OC Transpo took over transporting high school students away from yellow buses. That seemed to be the tipping point. Has there been any discussion about getting those resources that are moving high school students back onto yellow buses and away from OC Transpo and getting those resources back for the ordinary person? The problems that I hear from other people is OC worked, if you worked downtown, it was okay. It was pretty good. If you were working anywhere else in the city, you were stuck. I lived in, I lived in Britannia, worked in Bell's Corners. It was faster to walk. So any, last thing, this demographic doesn't cover the people that take buses, but how many people here are disappointed with the current bus service? Please raise your hand. All right, thank you.
I don't think I'm allowed to put my hand up too. But we've been through some pretty tough years, and a lot of things have combined to change the transit system in Ottawa to one that all of us, both who use it and who work at it, are less proud of than we once were. The coalescence of external things that all happened at the same time in the last 5 years has been very, very strange. You know, we worked for years and years and years to feed council information so they could decide what to do, because with the speed the city was growing at and the number of people who were using transit into downtown, we were actually going to be like out of capacity when we ran a bus every 20 seconds through downtown, and they were all the biggest buses we could buy. We wouldn't be able to carry one more customer. Remember in high school chemistry, that blue stone thing where you dropped one more crystal in and then it all went frozen? And we saw a little bit of that back in 2003 when we were following engineering advice that said, oh yeah, you can run up to 240 buses an hour. And we went just over 180 and it just stopped. And exactly what you're talking about. A friend, our former coworker, I saw this afternoon, he had his experience. He worked here, he worked at Constellation, he lived in Orleans, he was going home, and the buses were so slow going through downtown that he got off at Lion, walked up to Bay, bought a pair of shoes, came back out, kept walking up to Metcalfe and get on the bus ahead of the one he got off on his own route. And that's what we were dealing with in 2000 to 2005 or 2010. So council had to decide something, and we gave them a lot of information, and underground light rail was very clearly the best solution of a number of options. But it only goes from there to there, not what everyone goes. And of course, we got it, a lot of work to get it done, a lot of technical problems tripped over. We get it open. Second day, we had door problems. get some of that sorted out. Our ridership starts going up for the first time in 5 years, the very beginning, January and February 2020. And then we get hit with a worldwide pandemic like no one's seen for 100 years. And all of that's happening, and there's nothing you can do about it. There's all kinds of other things I could add too, which came together, like funding growth in some years, funding reduction in other years, depending on the way deals were being made in closing a budget at City Council. A little bit more year-to-year change than we want to see. And at this point, very hard to get out of where we are. We're working to provide excellent service where we can, and that may mean that we have to get out of some markets that we're in now, which is going to be a hard thing to do. But that's the work that we're doing, and that's part of we're talking to Cyril earlier this week about getting this year's budget ready. We'll be talking to the councillor about the results of the consultation we did with people and the analysis we've been doing over the summer about how do we build a really good transit system at our current funding level that works with the extensions to the O-Train system that are on their way soon.
Thank you. There's a lot to unpack there. We don't have the time, but perhaps this is the idea of having another conversation. You've been waiting a long time.
And my name is Lorraine Minot, and hi, my name is Lorraine Minot, and I live in the corner of Parkway Drive and Iris. And I was just wondering if anything's going to be done about the traffic and the speed limit on Iris, and if there'd be a stop sign in that corner. Because right there, that corner, the cars come over the bridge and they keep on speeding. And I've had motorcycles doing wheelies, I've had cars doing, spin ups and everything else. And it's a bad corner too, because there's no stop sign. We have kids that cross over to go to the school up in Fellows. We have seniors crossing the road to get to the mailbox. And the speed limit is 50. And originally when we lived there, the speed limit was 40. I think it'll get worse once the LRT is open, because there'll be more people dropping people off. I was just wondering if anything's going to be done before the LRT, about the traffic and the speed limit and the stop sign in that corner, because once they remove the detour, that light is going off, so people will really come down the bridge, and there's nothing to stop them till they get to Highgate. There's no stop sign or anything, and there's a lot of people speeding there. That's
Yeah, thank you. So recently, well, not recently, but over the past while, we've received quite a few concerns about speeding on Iris, and we've also had some come in about stop compliance, the many stop signs along there. So in discussions with the councillor and just recently, actually, we're going to be undertaking a study along the street. So we're going to look at stop compliance and operating speeds. And from that, we'll be able to, decide what we can implement in terms of traffic calming or ways to help with stop compliance. I just want to say one thing about the speed limit, though. Like, it's sometimes, like, everybody expects that if you lower the speed limit, everybody's going to drive slower, but it doesn't typically work like that on its own. We usually have to implement traffic calming measures in order for that to happen. So
it's a matter of finding additional resources. So we've chunked out Iris from Parkway to Pinecrest, like down past to Greenbank, practically as a study route. The follow-up question is, when does the detour for the buses end around that station? The Iris station.
Tristan can talk about the specifics of when that piece of road comes out, but in general, the bus detour comes out when the train opens.
Okay. I'm going to hop in with a question from online. So we've got a question from Kieran, who says, I recently went to an information session for the new zoning bylaw and saw the baseline BRT shown on a map of the future transit plans. Is this project still upcoming and can it be accelerated? In addition, instead of taking front lawns away from the homeowners on the street, I would prefer to see the dedicated bus lane taken from the vehicle lanes and the whole street be transformed into a boulevard. Is this a possibility? Pat, I think that's a you question.
So the baseline transitway has been on the books along with about a couple of dozen other major bus transit improvement projects across the city for 5-10 years. And I don't know how to say it. We're not getting funding from the provincial and federal governments for anything other than train lines. Now that maybe that'll be different in the post-COVID calculations of where to put money, but it's I can't say it's low cost, but compared to building an electric railway, it's lower cost. It's a sort of mid cost, still an expensive project, but it's really important. But it doesn't jump ahead instantly of other things, right? The other question there of the design technique of to put the 2 bus lanes in the middle of the street means widening the road with a judicious calculation of how many car lanes are needed. That's a design that was arrived at through a long participative process involving everybody. People who live along the street, people who drive along the street, people who ride transit along the street, and in places where all the car lanes are still needed, that does mean widening the road. And in places where a car lane can be taken away and repurposed as a bus lane, that's possible too.
Wayne, I suggest we go into rapid fire mode.
Okay, we're
Okay,
going into
so
rapid fire
we're
mode.
I've got 5 questions on
How
my
many do I
side. You've
have?
got a
I
bunch on
have
that side.
2, 3, 4.
So I'm gonna,
5.
yeah, I've got you, ma'am, down there. I'm gonna hold the mic. I'm gonna ask you to state your question as quickly as possible.
Good strategy, Dave. All right.
Hi, my name is Chris Clarion Rodriguez, and my question is about social assets rather than physical or infrastructure assets. We don't see a lot of diversity in this room, and I don't know about the people in the online crowd, but I wonder how many racialized ward residents feel left out of decision-making processes or conversations. And I would love to hear what the ward is currently doing to address social diversity and ethnic diversity in our conversations. As an immigrant myself, I want to see representation in rooms like such as this one, and also low income neighbors, whether they are homeowners or renters. That shouldn't be a matter. Everyone should be at this type of tables. Thank you.
Quickly. So ward specific, certainly we had a lot of rebuilding to do, a lot of relationships to initiate when we came into office in 2022. So certainly reaching out to, we have 2 auto community housing groups that have very strong community houses. So building the relationships with those residents and those community leaders to let them know that we are here to support their priorities and their intentions was quite a new development when we first took into office. We are trying to build out a relationship with Algonquin College to reach those students because those students live here. They are our residents, they are our neighbors. And right now we often have those students, us neighborhoods kind of vibe sometimes in our conversations. So trying to work together to build those bridges so that students can participate more meaningfully. So that's with the student association there, for example, or the new rec facility that's there. Otherwise, it's working with, for example, Matthew House. So Matthew House is it has a model for working with refugee claimants and families who are unfortunately right now being put into a shelter system because they don't have the resources to be diverted at that time so that they can find secure housing. So ensuring that Matthew House has the resources so that we can welcome more refugees into our neighborhoods and into our homes so that they can find, because they're very it can be a very successful story with the Matthew House resources. So trying to advocate for those kinds of mechanisms within College Ward as well, you know, and really just trying to make sure that we are, you know, we do pop-ups out in the community where we go to, like, you know, coffee shops or parks or whatever, anywhere in the community, and try and socialize there. We're trying to do this, which is really open. We try and, you know, we're really just trying to put ourselves out there, not only online, because that is often a barrier as well for low income seniors, persons with various languages. That's something we need to do better for sure. But yeah, it's something that we have to rebuild. And certainly we did speak with the panel today about whether or not they could bring someone, because we did acknowledge, although we did well for gender parity, we certainly didn't have like a diversity of ethnicities on the board or on the panel today. And so we did, you know, try and encourage each department to bring someone or to mentor someone through this process to participate. So trying to create those relationships is really part of it. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question. That wasn't rapid fire. I'm terrible at rapid fire. Okay.
I'll try and keep it really short. My name is Christine Tibelius, and I live in the City View Ryan Farm area. And most of you are probably on the panel aware of all the redevelopment that's occurring in the City View area. And my question, though, is about intensification and why the city is not using that as an opportunity to intensify, rather than allowing monster homes to be built on a large lot where there was once a small house with lots of green space. If they're going to build a large structure, why are they not requiring those to be duplexes?
I'll try to go rapid fire, I guess, on that one. The zoning allows certain uses, but really private homeowners, private property owners will decide what they want to build. So they can build within the, you know, the envelope that the zoning allows and the uses that the zoning allows, but the city is not requiring them to do certain things. Private property rights, I guess, is probably the short answer.
My name's Peggy. My name is Peggy Florida, and I live very near here. First of all, thank you very much for this meeting. I really appreciate, especially that the staff has showed up. My question is about Centrepoint Park, and particularly the ponds in Centrepoint Park. In past years, there have been sort of two ponds joined together, rather like a figure of 8. And with the fountain in one of them, I suppose, to aerate the water. This year, the fountain's not working, and the pond has practically disappeared because the rushes have grown, and we will have lost one of those ponds if something isn't done pretty quickly to get it back again. Thanks.
I can certainly do a quick response to that. So maybe what I can do is I can take it back to the team to get a bit more information, and through the councillor, we can get back to you if that's okay. Super.
Copeland Park. So my question is just about the affordable housing. So we're building a lot of places, and we're building a lot of places. And when you see the construction signs going up, it's luxury condo, luxury apartment, luxury this, luxury that. So how do you put that together that it's affordable when we're building this for affordable housing? So what is the definition of affordable housing? And when these buildings are going up, how do you determine how many of those units are supposed to be affordable housing?
Yes, thank you for the question. So you're right. It's complex to first define what is affordable housing and how it is affordable to whom. So the generally accepted definition of affordable housing is 80% of average market rent, which is determined by CMHC. And it can go up also to average market rent, but anything average market rent and below is considered affordable. And there is depth of affordability within that, meaning it can be less than 80% of average market rent. And that's a bit complicated to explain. Any project, there could be, it depends on the funding, it depends on the sizes, it can vary on the co-investment funding that is for that particular project. So an affordable housing project that is funded by the city. So we get funding from the municipal, provincial, federal government, and we allocate funding to affordable housing project. If we get new funding, we do a request for proposals, and then proponents can apply and submit their project for consideration. And then it goes through a series of assessment to determine viability. We sometimes also, once a project is an idea, it needs to get to the point of being shovel ready, as we call them. So there's a lot of pre-development work that needs to happen, and sometimes those projects can apply, and we do provide funding for pre-development work. And most of well, all of the projects that we fund are with not-for-profit organizations. So we at the city do not provide affordable housing or funding to private developers. So it's all not-for-profit organizations. Does that answer your question?
I'll just quickly add, though, within private development, how do we incentivize those developers to create affordable housing? That's a very different conversation. So Allison might be able to speak to that.
It's a little bit like the zoning question. So, you know, if a private developer is putting their money behind a project, it's their choice whether or not they want to make it luxury units or affordable units. In terms of what we allow versus what we require, there is one requirement, used to be called Section 37 under the Section 37 of the Planning Act. Now it's called the Community Benefits Charge. So there is a fee, a charge that is collected at the building permit stage that goes to the city, that a developer of a certain scale would pay, and that can be used for affordable housing. It's actually at the councillor's discretion. But I mean, I get asked this question a lot about why are you not forcing developers to provide affordable housing, but they build things, and there also has to be a long-term funding for like a rent subsidy, and they're not in the picture to do that.
Rating of affordable housing therefore becomes a different question. Who's going to support those in a long-term way? And don't get all excited when you hear it's at the councillor's discretion, because it ain't easy. But yes, you know, can we ask for 10%? Can we ask for sometimes 25%, which is a conversation you might see over the next month with some developments. You could you ask for cash in lieu? That's somewhat what Allison's describing with the community benefits charge, but it does require advocacy.
Hi, my name's Dave Hayward. I've lived on Checkers Road since 1964. Yes, I'm that old. My question is to Allison and Sean, particularly in regard to, I believe the address is 1279 Woodruff. That's a new duplex type unit that's gone in there. There's 8 units on each one. When you put this out for proposal, I identified in the plan, when you asked for comments on the build, they have 4 parking spaces for that whole complex. And when I identified that as being an issue, they said, no, if there's any problems with that, you deal with bylaw on it when it comes out. So rather than addressing the lack of parking for 16 potential vehicles, they said, deal with bylaw afterwards. Then it comes down to you, Sean, where it's your problem when you hear from me saying all these cars are parked all over Checkers Road because Allison's group hasn't provided enough, hasn't forced these developers to provide enough parking. So, sorry, Allison.
That's fine. So again, we're city staff. We take our direction from city council. City council has declared a housing emergency. And I don't mean to be glib either, but we haven't declared a parking emergency. So we are really trying to get housing built for a wide variety of people, different circumstances. In that case, I don't know exactly what what the parking requirement was there? It was 8 units and four parking spaces. Is that right?
Okay, so Dave, I think we did talk about this at the pop-up last week too, so I appreciate that we're going to work on this specific issue. But with respect to Allison, I will even go further to say that we have developments happening right now in the downtown core that requires 0 parking spots, and there are cities all over that are actually eliminating parking minimums. So the question that the problem that you're describing is a transportation and transit problem. That to me is where we need to see the investment so that we can get people out of cars in College Ward. It's not going to be resolved through bylaw or through planning. It's going to be resolved through council priorities. So that's why I'm interjecting, because I think that's what we need to be dealing with. So all this to say, I'm conscious that we're 5 minutes over time, and we still have a lot of questions left, and we're not going to be able to get to all of them. And so now it becomes how we get organized to address your questions after the fact. If we go another 5-10 minutes, we still won't get to everybody. So I think we actually do have to call it. And I am really, really sorry to do that, because it's wonderful that the energy in the room picked up so much. So I want to say, from the bottom of my heart, de la profonde de mon cœur, merci, merci, merci. Thank you so much for being here today. I really, really appreciate it. And the residents of College Ward deserve it. They deserve it. These are people that care about their communities. I am so grateful to each and every one of you for coming out and sharing your stories with us and trusting us with these personal stories. David, myself, Chelsea, Heather, put up your hand there. Hey, Jordan, we're all here. So I think the best solution is, if you still have questions going on, please come see one of us. We'll write it down, or you can put it on the board and you can, sort amongst yourselves how you want to do that, but we'll take them down and we'll. Yep, or you can email us tomorrow. We generated a lot of casework, but I'm just so grateful for such a positive, mutually supportive environment tonight. Thank you so much for coming, and I'll look forward to seeing you again. And very much thanks for city staff. Thank you.